Nice to see you. And I see a fantastic webcam, but I don't see a name. So I'm just very happy you turned on your webcam, but I can't say hi. So hi. Hi. I can see Rochelle has joined us too. Very good. So we're not having any music this morning because, we couldn't find a music with the volume that we liked. So if you often joining us during events, you know that we usually have some music picked by Dave, but not this morning. This morning, it's all that automation. So I think I'm still going to wait another minute and then I'll do an official start. So you still have time to grab a cup of tea or something if you want, especially if you're working from home and the heating is not super cooperative this morning. Feel free to get, a nice cup of coffee or tea. Or if you're in the office and the heating is also not cooperative, feel free just to bring something along with you to keep you warm during this session. Very good. So if that's okay, I think we're gonna get started. Yeah, cool. Hi, everyone. I would like to start by acknowledging country. So I am on Wurundjeri country, and this land has been cherished and protected for centuries by the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I am grateful to them for that, and I pay my respect to their elders, past and present, and I welcome any First Nation colleagues joining us today. So my name is Ketia Lombino. I'm part of the Innovation Network team, and I have several colleagues running this event with me today, Kerry and Andrew. And today my colleague Dave Steven, who is usually doing all the spotlighting, is getting in the spotlight and he's going to share with us how to use Power Automate. So Dave works as the Innovation Network's program officer. He manages groups, automation, data analytics, graphic design. To me, he's a true innovative spirit because he's always looking for new ways to offer you a better experience on the platform or during an event like this one. And he's been researching and implementing new tools to augment collaborative working. He's a fantastic collaborator and core business practices in a hybrid working environment. I am also very happy to have with us on the call Sarah and Joyce, who will be interpreting in Auslan for us today. So it will be a fast-paced session, especially depending on your level of comfort with automation. So you can absolutely decide to participate the way you want. You can follow along the steps and create your automation, or you can just watch Dave do it, and you can then do it yourself later. That's super fine. If you miss something, there are a few ways you can catch up. So one thing I'm going to invite you all to do right now is to turn on the full transcript and move it to another screen or just minimize the window so that if you miss something, you can just go back there and look for, what did you say it was? What was the steps that I just missed? So to do this, you have to go at the bottom of your screen and you have to use the up arrow that is next to show captions. So if you click on show captions, the automated captions are showing, but if you click on the up arrow, you're going to see view full transcript, and that's going to open a window next to us, and you're going to be able to see everybody's talking with the speaker names and all that. So if you miss something, that's a very, very good way for you to go back just a few sentences as, that was this button. Okay, so I really invite you to do this. Other things you can do as well is that today we are live streaming, which means that as I'm talking, this event is happening live on the homepage of the Innovation Network. So if you get lost, you can go back to the homepage of the Innovation Network and use the controls to replay what just happened and then join live. So that can also be an option for you. And finally, we're recording today's session, so you can also wait just a couple of days, wait for the recording, and then simply set aside 30 minutes to watch the recording and do your automation. All those are absolutely fine ways for you to participate. I'm very excited to learn about automation. I'm the only one on my team today who benefits from it but doesn't know how it works. So it's going to be a very nice experience for me. I do hope you're going to enjoy that too. Dave is a fantastic teacher, so you're in good hands. Have a great event. Up to you, Dave.
Thanks, Cattell. That's a very kind intro. Hello, everyone. My name is Dave, and usually I live on Dja Dja Wurrung land, but today I am on Wotherong. So I think Cattell's already done a really great job of sort of giving context to what I do. Just another piece there is over the last few years, I've been so fascinated by emerging technology that we can use to make the way that we do our work, our core business practices, especially in a hybrid working environment, more efficient. So one thing to note right up the bat is I actually taught myself everything that I'm going to show you today. And it's taken me a few years to get to sort of where I am now, but this is all self-taught thanks for the resources available to me. I'm going to do the share screen dance and get up my slides. Looking for a nod or something that we're on the right one.
Looks good.
Thanks, Andrew. Oh, and also, so all my lovely colleagues might jump in at various points throughout today. So that was Andrew's voice in the background there. If I missed something, or they might just want to chime in and chat. So most of you have never used Power Automate, and most of you can access the tool. So that's perfect. This is a 101. We're going to go through all the basics in this tool. Some of you, based on your responses, have quite a lot of experience. So you might find a few things that you can take away from this session, but mostly we're focusing on people who've not used this tool before. So just again, quickly, if you want to access the transcript, here's a visual guide. Just hit the caption and the up arrow, full transcript. And additionally, if you hit the sparkles down the bottom, there is an AI tool that can help you. So if you ask a question in the AI companion, it'll offer you a summarized response based on what we've discussed in today's session. So a quick outline. We're going to be covering off three sort of core elements. So the first two sections will be a bit of a learning section where we're going over some context around what is automation, and then a four-step sort of process that you should take anytime that you're building something. And the last step there with the clapping hands, in my mind, I thought that was like an engaged hand doing something, is that we will build that automation together. So this is a hands-on event. So what is an automation? Feels like a weird question, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same starting point here. So I've got a couple of examples to show you, but generally speaking, it's the use of technology to perform tasks or processes with minimal human intervention. So this could involve using software, machinery, or some other systems to carry out repetitive or complex tasks that would otherwise require human effort. So some good examples of automation that you probably are already aware of. There's in the manufacturing world, so whether it's industrial lines or even robotic arms assembling products in a production line. I do love that those arms are now making solar panels as well as cars. Perhaps in this finance space, so there's algorithms for trading stocks or processing transactions, and even sort of in like a user engagement customer service space. So that might be an automated email or a chatbot handling a customer inquiry. There's also some examples of things that you probably shouldn't try to automate. So anything involving a decision made that you'd rather a human brain take the lead on, perhaps counseling or other support services that requires a human touch, any policy interpretation, or any complex inquiries. So they're things that we should still make sure that we are using our human brains to sort of look at. Why should I automate? So some of them might feel obvious up front. So you'll free up some time so you can work on other things. It's important because it improves accuracy and efficiency. I'm quite bad when it comes to like attention to detail. I'm sure my manager on the call loves me saying this out loud. But using an automation tool, it's actually collecting data and placing it more effectively and efficiently than I could. I might be distracted by something shiny or an email coming through. Simply put, it feeds, like, it frees up a lot of time for you to work on other things. It's something you should be able to consider right now in your job to enable innovation across your work. Kind of worth noting that there are some automations that involve artificial intelligence, but we won't be talking to those things today. Today, we'll be looking at a tool called Power Automate. Power Automate is a Microsoft product, and it's a no or low code tool, which means that it's designed for people who don't have programming skills. So you don't need to write lines of code or anything like that. It allows you to create automated workflows. And we like to call them flows because it's that idea of, I like to think of a nice river stream. You start at the top, it ends at the bottom, doing one thing after another. And some examples of how we could use this. You might every day want a summary of planner tasks sent to you, so little to-do list items coming through to you in the morning. You might want to use this tool to help you with data processing, so to filter and send data from Excel to a monthly email, perhaps to help you with your document management, so to save attachments directly to a SharePoint file, or even to, in Microsoft Forms, capture data to appear in a spreadsheet and send an email. And that's a bit of foreshadowing because we'll be doing that later. So before we progress any further, I want to pose you a question. And that is, what do you think you could automate in your work today? So I'd love you to pop your answer in the chat. I'm going to come off the screen share so I can see them coming through. If they don't come through, then I can now see myself again. But I'll give you some time to sort of start filling them out. Otherwise, I'm sure Andrew will do some Dorothy Dixes to get you thinking. Travel request forms, that's a good one. Oh, here they are coming through. Triaging minister office requests, that's a really interesting one. Response to functions venue suggestions, that's a really good one there too. I see Amy's had a try at trying to pull some data from a SharePoint list into a spreadsheet. Excel reporting, leave calendar, that's a useful one. Great. What I'm seeing here is a theme of some pretty repetitive tasks that you might be doing in your day-to-day at work already, that you think, oh, I just wish there was a way to make this happen automatically. And so hopefully with some of the skills we'll teach you today, you'll be able to take that away and apply it into some of those more specific use cases that you have. Now, I'm going to give you a sneak peek behind the curtain right now and jump into Power Automate to show you what the tool looks like. We'll return back to it in a second so I can actually show you how to use it. But for now, I just want to give you a quick little overview of the interface. So the tool has been designed with an easy sort of drag and drop sort of interface. So let me just open up an existing flow. Now, there's a lot going on here, but we don't need to worry about the detail. This is simply the flow that we created to bring you to this event today. So it kind of looks a bit like Lego blocks. We've got these colorful tiles positioned under the screen, and each of them just do a simple function. And all of that is drag and drop, so we can move things around quite easily. We'll return back to that in a moment. We have access to a huge range of templates. So half the things that you want to do probably already exist here within our sort of start from a template space. And Power Automate, because it's a Microsoft product, it's already integrated with like over 300 applications and services that Microsoft offers. So that's, all of your Office 365 pieces, your Dynamic 365, anything in SharePoint, but more practical examples like Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, Excel, Forms, tons there to play around with. It's also probably worth having a look at some of the different automation types. So we can have your flows start in a bunch of different ways. Sometimes they might be automated. So that often means that it's triggered by something like someone filling out a form. An instant cloud flow is when perhaps every now and again you come in here and press a button and then you trigger it manually, and that's what starts that flow. We have a scheduled cloud flow. So that means maybe every morning at 9 a.m., you send an overview of how many event registrations there have been the day before, which is what we do internally, which is really helpful. There's a couple of other ones here as well, and I won't go into the deep detail there. But one thing that might be curious to you is that we've got this AI designer here. So I personally find that one a little bit, it's not quite reached its full potential yet. But there's a future here where instead of building a flow, you can just describe what you want something to do. and then it'll do it for you. So I'll let you experiment with that in your own time, but it's something there available to us. For the sake of today's discussion, I won't go through the desktop flow or process mining. All right, so there's a quick little overview of the tool. We'll return to that in a moment. I'm going to go back to my slides, which I hope are now on the screen. Yep. So I'm going to walk you through now the 4 steps you need to take sort of in advance to you deploying and making your flow hit go. That was not written down, and it was an awful rhyme, and I will not say it again. So I want to run you through an example where we've created a automation flow for our team. So one thing that will keep coming up is work seems to be getting bigger and the team seems to be getting smaller. So we were sort of forced to find ways to make our processes more efficient and effective. What you're looking at here is the Innovation Network team. There are 5 of us, and we're covering across groups and content and events all across the offerings of the Innovation Network. Most of you have probably interacted with some automations we've already set up in the past, such as this event registration flow to get you into this room. You might have participated in the whole of VicGov Coffee Dates program, which is automated. It does have my name on it, and I make it look like that I'm writing you a hello, thanks for registering. It's actually just an automation that I've set up and try to make it feel like it had a bit of personality. Some content flows as well. So if you've taken part in our PDP reminder tool and some other bits and pieces, you've actually just been signed up to one of our automations. You're not actually aware of what the Innovation Network is. I'm quite impressed that you managed to get into the session today, because that's where it was advertised. But just a quick overview of who we are. It's an online platform at the address in the top left-hand corner of the screen there, which serves the Victorian Public Service. So all you need to be is a VPSer to join the platform. Currently, we serve over 20,000 members. So we're putting up events and training for you to come and attend, like this one. There's over 140 groups for you to join, and they range from like the VPS Pride Network through to the data and analytics community of practice. Tons of resources and events within those groups for you to engage with. We also have an absolute huge library, I think over 8,000 pieces of content around written resources. So toolkits to help you do your best VPS work. So we run a lot of events and help a lot of people run events. And we identified this problem. And this is step 1 in sort of designing an automation, is to identify your problem. We used to manually manage calendar invites. To this date, we've had a total of 50,000 event registrations. So we're dealing with some pretty big numbers here. Manually managing these invites was very time consuming and inaccurate for our small team. So I was saying that I was not great with data entry before, and this would cause issues because we might send the invites out to the wrong people or at the wrong time, and people get confused. And from your perspective, you just want to have a smooth event experience. And we were spending half our time doing the logistics of the event preparation, as opposed to thinking about the content and of the event itself and the marketing of the event. So it was very time consuming. We tried a few event registration tools, so like Humanitix and Eventbrite, but discovered that we found people would be more likely to come along to an event if we send them a calendar invite directly. And asking people to add an iCal to your calendar was a bit of a pain. So we had this problem. How might we send a calendar invite directly to someone who signed up to a form? We could find an answer to that. It would save us a lot of time. So we've defined our problem. Step 2 here is designing the logic. So we had discovered Power Automate a couple of years ago, and we sort of thought this might be an appropriate tool to help us automate our calendar invite registration process. So we had a play and discovered that it was this Lego drag and drop tool, and we thought, oh, there might be a way to actually use this tool to help us with this problem. And obviously the answer is yes. But we discovered that it was really important for us when we use this tool to really step through the logic of anything before we built it, because otherwise we'd end up in a bit of a messy outcome. So step 2, design the logic. We want people to sign up. So we don't know what tool we'll use, but we just want people to sign up somehow, give us their information. Then we want to pass that information to a database somewhere. So get the data. Once we have that data, we want to send along a calendar invite somehow. And then we want to send a follow-up registration confirmation email at the end, just to round out the process. And we want to make this unique and tailored, so it's a very personal approach. That's step 2. That leads to this golden rule here. So there's 2 golden rules. And the first one here is don't automate something that is more efficient to do manually. So once you've like sort of scratched out your logic, you might then work out, oh, actually, this is an ongoing thing, or this is actually going to be a lot easier for me to do really quickly and manually. There's a bit of a meme in the top right-hand corner that I think describes this quite well. It's quite exciting to spend 10 hours automating something that's actually a simple task that will take you 10 minutes. So you just want to think about the impact of what you're doing here. And you shouldn't spend all your day automating something if it actually isn't worth your time to do so. So once you've sort of passed that logic sort of test, your next step, step 3, is to choose the tools you want to use to perform the automation. So looking back at those early scratchings here, we've got the logic described. Let's have a look at what tools Microsoft offers for those steps to take place. And the first one there for the sign up, we'll use a Microsoft form. That's a great tool. We can collect data that way. Step 2, we need to gather the data somewhere. Excel is perfect. It's a great database for that. Step 3, we want to send the calendar invite. Everyone's using Outlook. Let's use the send invite function within Outlook. And step 4, we want to send a calendar confirmation piece. Let's use Outlook as an email confirmation tool for that. So that was basically the process for us to develop the calendar sort of registration process, which you've all signed up with before. Leads to this other critical piece. So we've defined exactly what we're going to build and the tools that we're going to use to do so. We just need to be careful not to add things to that. This space, after you've sort of generated your minimum viable product, to add things to it. But let's, at the very first instance, make sure we just deliver what we've initially designed before we sort of get distracted by too many shiny things, which I tend to. I just felt that's one of my favorite Simpsons memes, when he just disappears into the hedge. Right, so the last step here is to build and test the thing within Power Automate. And this is basically the last slide before we actually go and start playing around ourselves. But a couple of considerations and things to hold on to here is that things can go wrong. So it's important to involve other people when you're testing this. So maybe ask a colleague to run through the flow and try the automation out before you throw it live into the world, like you would someone look over a draft of a document that you were designing in your work. Make sure that you're sharing it around. It's helpful if you have someone in your team who's learning this process with you, so you can bounce off one another. So that way they can sort of check your work and, you know, test your logic and see if there's better ways of things to happen, or to see if there's any unintended consequences that could occur. And it's also good to note that you probably don't need these things to work forever. So flows will turn off automatically if they're not used, but it's still also important to just every now and then go over some things that you've designed, just to make sure that they're still operating the purpose that you had initially intended them to do. Sometimes I go back through my back catalog of flows and I'm like, oh, what's that still doing? And it's probably just chewing up memory and it doesn't need to be doing that. Right, so they're the 4 steps that I'm going to leave you with today. And we're going to start pivoting into playing in the tool itself. So we have a scenario that we're going to play around with together. We're just going to assume we've done steps 1, 2, and 3 already. So we've discovered our problem, we've plotted out the logic, and we found the right tools to do the job. And what that is we're going to create a book club sign-up form. So someone perhaps wants to create a new book club, perhaps a behavioral insights unit. I actually do know they have a book club. They want to use a form to collect data. They want to store that data in an Excel spreadsheet somewhere in a database, and then they want to send an email confirmation to the people who have signed up as a way of just saying, thanks very much for signing up. So we're going to go away and build this together. And I just want to share some things before we do that, because this is where things might move quickly for some people, and you might get lost. So just we'll go over a couple of points again. remember that this event is recorded. So if you get lost or want to refer to it, you'll be able to watch the recording online. If you've just joined and you missed out on this, if you go to the Innovation Network homepage, there is a live stream of this event. So if I move a bit too quickly, you can go back to, you can move the little cursor along to where you were before in the session and maybe hear what I said earlier on, and then you can catch up again if you want to. And you have access to the live transcript and AI chat feature as well to help you catch up. People with two screens will be at an advantage, so you can put me on one screen while I work through this, and you can play around on the other. But I'll make sure to leave a pause between each step so you can catch up. All right, that's enough housekeeping. I'm going to ask you all to open up Power Automate and Microsoft Forms. So I'm going to get a link and put that in the chat unless a colleague beats me to it. I don't have it handy in front of me, so we'll see who wins. Kerry was a lot faster than me. Thank you very much, Kerry. Great. So I'll give you a second to open up those two tools, and I want you to focus on Power Automate. That's where we're going to start off here. I'll give you a second to get there. I'm going to also share my screen. So some of you just might end up wanting to watch what I'm doing. And you'll need to probably look at what I'm doing a little bit so you know where we are. All right. So you're all loading this up right now, and hopefully some of you might need to sign in. Some of you may not be able to access the tool. In that case, definitely watch what I'm doing. But your page should look a bit like this one. I'm going to give you a very quick tour of your homepage. So we have at the top here, we have that sort of AI tool, which I recommend having a play with at another time, where you can start describing a problem and it'll try to automatically generate a flow for you. We're not going to worry about that today. We'll also have sort of a list of learning and workshops that I recommend you check out. They're actually really good. So if you want to keep learning after today's session, have a look at those learning for every level sessions that are available on the homepage here. But I'm going to draw your attention to the top left-hand corner of the screen, where we have Home, Create, Templates, Learn, and My Flows. So your home screen is what we're looking at here. Create is where we can generate flows together. Templates, access to lots of learning, templates to get you going. And My Flows is where you can see flows that have been shared with you and flows that you have created. But we're first going to go into Create. I'll give you a second to load up into the Create section. And we're going to create an automated cloud flow from blank. Once you've clicked that, a window should appear called Build an Automated Cloud Flow. We're going to call it Book Club Sign Up. You might have another name that you want to use, something more creative and inventive. And then underneath that, we have a whole list of triggers that we can pick from. And those triggers mean that once something happens associated with that app, that's going to trigger this flow to start. We're going to pick the very top one. And if it's not the top of the list for you, you might need to search it. It's called When a New Response is Submitted, and it's connected to a Microsoft form. So we're going to select that and press Create. And that'll bring us into sort of the building blocks, really where the magic happens within Power Automate. There's quite a lot to take in here, and I'm already going to be a little divisive because in the top right-hand corner, there's something called New Designer, and there's a toggle there on or off. I personally don't like using the New Designer. Maybe I'm getting old, but I sort of started using the old Designer in Power Automate. So I feel more comfortable using that. So I'm actually just going to toggle in the top right-hand corner from New to Old Designer. I recommend you do that today as well, because that's what I'm going to be using to show you how to build. The New Designer, I think, probably has about 6 months of sort of catching up before it feels as comfortable as using the old one. All right, so your screen should look a bit like this. We've got a piece at the top there that says when a new response is submitted, and it's looking for a Microsoft form to be powered by. So we're actually going to leave that window open here, waiting for us. And then I'm going to instruct you to go over to Microsoft Forms. So you might already have that link open. If not, you can go to forms.office.com. I'll give you a second to get there. Thank you. I see people are putting links in the chat. Thanks, Andrew. And it should look a bit like this. So we're going to create a new form, and this form is going to be what people fill out. We're going to gather some data from those people, and then we're going to store the data from this form in that spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on New Form. It'll take a second to load. And if you've not used this tool before, I won't actually go into exhaustive detail into describing how to use this, but I'll let you know what you need to do right now to create this flow. At the top, we're going to call this form something. I'm going to call it Book Club Sign Up. It's important you call it something distinctive because we'll be looking for that name in other parts of Power Automate. Then we're going to ask a couple of questions of the people who are signing up to this book club. First, we're going to be asking them what their name is. So from the question prompter, so like when you can kind of pick sort of what kind of question or multiple choice that you're going to ask someone, we're going to pick text. And for our first question, we're going to ask for people's name. All right, once you've got that, we're going to ask a second question, a second text question. And we're going to ask for people's email address. And we want their email address because we want to send them a confirmation email. So it's important that we collect that data. Right, the third question, and you can add as many questions as you want. The third one we're going to be asking is maybe what their favorite book is. Maybe they want to let us know what they want to read in the book club, and we want to gather that data. Cool. All right. So our form is basically ready to go. A couple of sort of hygiene things that are good here to consider. In the top right-hand corner of your Microsoft Forms interface, there's a couple of things we can play around with here. You can play with styling if you want. I don't suggest getting lost in that rabbit hole right now, but feel free to get back to that later. But if you click the three buttons and go to settings, we want to shift it so anyone can respond to this form. In the top there, we can see who can fill out this form. So that way I can send it to people in other departments because maybe I don't want to just get people to sign up from our tenancy. It says there only people in VicGov can respond, but I'm in VPSC, Victorian Public Sector Commission. That's the whole of VicGov Cenatex tenancy. So if you're maybe in another organization, you might want to make it the anyone can respond button. There's some other settings there you might want to play around with as well, such as how long the form is open and how long it's accepting responses for. You might want to let people save responses. There's plenty of things you can play around with there. But for now, we've got what we need and we can sort of move on to the next step. So I'm going to go back to my Power Automate screen under that Create a Flow section. I'll wait for you to catch up with me. And we're going to return to that prompt when a new response is submitted. So what we want to put in here, we're going to click the little drop down. By the way, you may have noticed I've made my cursor massive in pink, so I hope you can see it. There's a list of named forms here, and these will be all the forms that you've created in the past. So I've made a lot of events, so that's why there's so many in here. You could also just start typing the name of your form. There we go. As you can see, I've run this test a few times, but I know it's this one here at the top, Book Club Sign Up. Select the form that you're wanting to insert into this flow, and then you're ready to add your next step. So what's happening now, once that form has been filled out in the future, it'll power up this flow. Now we want to add another step that we capture all the data that's been fed into that form. So I'm going to click New Step, and it'll open up this big sort of interactive box. And in here, we get to pick between the whole library of 300 plus apps and their functions. I want to do something with Microsoft Forms now. So I'm going to search for Microsoft Forms. I'm just going to write Forms at the top there. And in this top window, it'll show the different applications that have forms in its name. And in this bottom window where you see actions and triggers, that's telling you what those apps can do. So let's filter to Microsoft Forms. So I'm making sure that I'm using the right app. And it's going to tell us what Microsoft Forms can do as an action here. And I want to get the response details. So I'm going to click Get Response Details. And it'll insert the new block. So I'll wait a second for you guys to catch up. Get Response Details, and that'll insert that new block. Cool. So similar to the top question here, which you can open up again, it's looking for the form ID just like before. So we want to re-plug in the name of our form that we created, book club sign up. Oops. So it's recognized that that's in there. And I'm going to click in that sort of empty box next to response ID. And it's going to open up something called dynamic content. Now, I'm totally aware I'm introducing so many new things right now, but remember, you can jump back and watch the recording, or if I go too quickly, you can go to the Innovation Network homepage and go back in the live stream. When I click in that response ID box, it'll open up this dynamic content piece on the right. If it doesn't open for you, you can click that sort of blue linked text called Add Dynamic Content. So anything that we do in a flow, it'll add sort of steps in the dynamic content section. So it's under the sort of subheading here where it says, when a new response is submitted, we're getting the response ID from that first step. So we can insert the response ID that we've gathered in the initial step and automatically stick it in there. That was a really poor explanation for that, but for the case of this, just do it, and then it'll make more sense as we use other dynamic content throughout. It'll make a lot of more sense actually in a moment. Right, so we're ready to create a place to store the data that we've gathered. I'm going to now go to and invite you to as well, go to either OneDrive or SharePoint. Now, most of you should have access to a OneDrive. Some of you may not. Most of you should have access to a SharePoint, and I acknowledge that some of you may not as well. So I'm sorry if, unfortunately, you're unable to do that step. But for the case of this example, I'm going to load up my personal OneDrive in Office 365 Online, which looks like this. So I'll give you a second to open up your OneDrive or your SharePoint, or just somewhere where you want to save an Excel document. It has to be in the cloud. I'll just give you a second to get that loaded. Cool. All right. What I want to do in here is I want to find a place to load up a Excel spreadsheet and have it in the cloud. So I'm going to add new Excel workbook and have it created somewhere safe, somewhere where I can find it and have access to it. We need to call it something sensible. So I'm going to call it Book Club Sign Up. Give it a second to load. So now when I look for this Excel spreadsheet a bit later, I'll need to remember it's called the Book Club Sign Up. So this is where things get really exciting and you start seeing immediate sort of outcomes from what we're doing here. What we're going to do in Excel is create a table, and the table will have the same headers as the question that we ask in the flow, in the form, with one exception. So let's start by putting in column B, name, which is the first question that we ask in the form. In column C, we're going to ask for the email address, which is the second question we ask. And then in column D, we ask for the favorite book of the person who's filling out that form. In the very first column, I'm going to add an additional field, which is timestamp. So I want to know what time someone has submitted an entry to the form. Cool. So you might have added other questions in your form. So make sure you make your Excel spreadsheet look exactly the same as what you've created in Microsoft Forms. Once you've got them filled out, we need to convert this into a table. So I'm going to highlight my headers, and in the search bar at the top, I'll write table. and click that action where I can format it as a table, and it has those header values. Cool. Now I've got those headers formatted as a table. I'm going to go to the menu here under table design, and you don't need to do this, but it's good hygiene. And I'm going to name it something. I'm going to call it Book Club Database. That way, it's just going to be really easy for me to find in future when I'm trying to work out where that table is within the spreadsheet. All right, so conscious that we just did quite a few things there. I'm now going to go back to the flow that we've created. And the next step will involve finding where that spreadsheet is and adding a row to that table. So when someone has submitted a form response, we'll be adding a row to that table with the data included. So I'm going to go to new step, like I did with the get response details. And I'm going to look for the app Excel. And I'm going to filter this view to Excel Online. And there's so many actions here. So if you're new to this, you might see you might inspire some ideas as you're clicking through to look at the different actions you can do in Excel. But we're looking for one in particular, which is add a row into a table. If you can't find it, you can actually simply just search add a row into a table in that search bar, and that action will appear at the top. Add a row into a table. Cool. So it looks like it's asking for a lot of confusing things. It's asking for basically where the document is and the name of the table. So we'll go through those steps now. So for some of you using SharePoint and OneDrive, it'll look a bit different. So I'll just try to quickly explain the differences here. The very top of the list should show you where your OneDrive is. So that's your personal OneDrive, OneDrive for Business. And then underneath that, if you weren't able to upload to OneDrive and only to SharePoint, you'll have a list of all of the different teams that you might be a part of. So mine is Workforce Development and Innovation, for example. I'd be able to click on that and select that as my location, but I'll be selecting OneDrive for Business for my example. Cool. So the second question there is document library. That's basically what folder it's in. It's more technical than that, but we can just pretend it's a folder. So we can click that drop-down button called Show Options. If you're using OneDrive, it might offer you two options. So you might need to click between the two and work out which one it is. So select one, and then, okay, that's the right one, good. The next question there is File. This is where the interface becomes a bit easier to use. You can click the little file, like show picker there, and it opens up a list of all of the documents and folders that you have within that location. So now I can sort of browse and find where I have saved that Excel spreadsheet. And there it is, the Book Club Sign Up XLS. The final question in this list is to pick the table that I want to connect this flow to. And we named ours the Book Club Database. Cool. So magic just happened. So after I waited just 30 milliseconds, it's opened up a bunch of new sort of fields. And those fields, you will have noticed, correlate exactly with what I've put in my table. So the Excel spreadsheet has connected with the Power Automate flow so quickly, and you can probably interpret what's about to happen. Using dynamic content, I can click inside of each of these empty spaces, and you'll see that from the Get Response Details step above, I can see the questions that I've asked in my form. So I can see the name question, the email question, the favorite book question, etc., as well as the submission time, so when someone has filled out that flow. So under the timestamp field, I'm going to click submission time, and it will record the data of what time that form was filled out. Under name, I'm going to click name. Under email, I'm going to click email. And under favorite book, I'm going to click favorite book. Great. So we're basically done. We're now storing the data of someone filling out that form in that spreadsheet. I'll wait a second to let you catch up before we move on to the next step. And I'm getting a little parched. I'm going to have a big gulp of water.
When you're ready, Sarah.
All right. So the next step and the last step in this process will be sending an email to the person who's just registered for this Coffee Date, not Coffee Dates program. That was a slip because I run one, the book club program. So we're going to add a new step to this flow, like we did with the add a row and get response details. New step. And we're going to search for Outlook as the app that we want to use. And there it is, Outlook. And we want to send an email. So let's use send an email version 2. Sometimes you might notice there's a version number next to some of the actions. And that's just indicating to you that they've iterated and added like a newer version to it. Some people might need access to the older version still. So you should be able to access version 1 if you need to. But it's always best practice to use the newest one. There we go. Send an email v2. So this kind of looks like a familiar interface. Kind of looks like you're just writing an email in Outlook. You can write who it's to, you can put the subject line in, and you can add some body text. So we're going to use dynamic content again. So if someone's told us what their email address is, if I click in the to field, hit that add dynamic content piece, and from the get response details, I can insert the email address that they filled out. Let's call this email subject line something that's useful. So maybe I'll say, thanks for registering for the book club, the Behavioral Insights book club. Now we can sort of personalize this email because we know who they are. So I can write hello, and then using dynamic content, I can grab their name from the form. And using the formatting tools in here that you can see in front of you, you can style this email however you want. Thanks for registering. We can't wait to see you at the Behavioral Insights Book Club. Oops. Maybe, and then we can maybe chuck in the answer for that last question. Maybe we can read, favorite book together soon. Cheers, Dave. Now, for some of our advanced users, you're actually able to do HTML email. Now, I won't go into detail on what that looks like now, but when you receive emails from the Innovation Network, they have like branding and styling around it, and using HTML emails, that's enabled us to do that. But this will just come through as a simple looking email for today. There's some advanced options, which I'll just quickly go over. So say if you had a shared inbox and you wanted to send this email from like the Behavioral Insights unit at DPC account, you can put the from field and change that to be the Behavioral Insights unit address. For the sake of today, I'll actually make it the Innovation Network email. If you want to CC yourself so that you're aware that someone signed up, you can just type in your email address down the bottom. You can even add attachments, but that's a slightly more advanced step and we won't look at that today. So we've actually just created the flow, and even me speaking relatively slowly, within 15-20 minutes, have automated the book club sign up. Before we do anything else, I'm going to hit save. And when you hit save, Microsoft Power Automate sort of looks through the flow to make sure everything's where it should be. And it might actually come up with an error if something's not correctly sort of inputted. My favorite thing is to see this little green tag at the top, your flow is ready to go. That's telling me that it's ready to test. So the final step in our Power Automate extravaganza is just to make sure your flow is working. And this is where we can test our flow. In the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see this test button. When you click on that, it'll open up this interface offering a manual test or an automatic test. A manual test means that we need to submit an example. So it'll be a form response. and then it'll fire up and test all the steps. And then in future, the automatic one means that I can refer to other manual steps that are tests that have been tried in the past and push them through. You'll see what that looks like in a second. So I'm going to click on, let's manually test this flow and press the test button underneath. And my screen's going to change in a moment, and it'll be this little spinning wheel like this. And it's kind of just waiting to be tried out. It wants a submission to go through. So I'm going to return to Microsoft Forms and look at the form that I created here. I'm going to click on Collect Responses in the top right-hand corner. And that gives me access to a link that I can distribute to the people who I want to sign up on this form. So I might put that on a website, I might email that around, but this is the link that people use to fill out the form. So I'm going to copy that link, and I'm going to pop it in a new browser. So here I have the form in front of me as a participant, and I'm just going to fill it out. So my name is Dave, it's my email address, and right now I am reading Brandon Sanderson. This isn't my favorite book, but it's just top of mind. I'm reading Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives. And I do wonder if anyone in the chat is reading that too. All right, so I'm going to hit submit. And once I hit submit, I'm going to quickly click over to look at my testing flow page, and we'll be able to see some magic happen. So I've flipped back over to my testing flow page, and I'm going to hopefully see a lot of green ticks. So very satisfyingly, I can see ticks that it's powered up once the form response has been submitted. I can see a tick that we've collected all the form response details. I can see a tick next to add a row into a table, and I can see a tick next to send an email. So as far as I can tell, all of these things have occurred. I'm going to go jump over to my spreadsheet and see if the data has been recorded. Great, there it is. I can see that I now have this interactive spreadsheet that I could share with colleagues. So it's not that, not like it's one that's saved directly to my desktop. I could share this collaboration link with all of my team, and they could see live responses come in over time, which means that we can have this shared database of knowledge for when people sign up to this form. And the last thing, I should look in my inbox and see if I have a little email waiting for me. So tons of secret squirrel business in here, but I do not mind. Great, I can see at the very top, I have an email from the Innovation Network inbox to me because I filled out the form, and CC'd me because I wanted to be CC'd. And it's got all the information in there. Hello, Dave, thanks for registering. We can't wait to see you at the Behavioral Insights Book Club. Maybe we can read Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives together soon. So that is a very basic flow that we've set up together there. And this forms a foundation for so many other automations that we've set up in the Innovation Network team, but I imagine across a lot of other workplaces too. So I'll give you a moment now to test your flows. And I'm hoping that you're all out there giving that a go right now. I'm going to just take off my screen share for a second and have a big gulp of water. I'm wondering if perhaps you want to put in the chat if you had any success and you've had any luck getting your flows up and running. It worked. Thank you, James. Oh, good. Good job, everyone. And I know that some people, it may not have worked, and that's okay. It might be because of the technology that you're using, or I might have gone a little bit fast. But remember, we've got the recordings so that we can check it out. Be careful when you put your email address in, because if you put like a space after it, sometimes it breaks. And I've got a really bad habit of adding a space after my email address. So I break my own flows all the time. Oh, good. I'm glad to see that a bunch of you saying that it's working okay. Someone it didn't work for because they've breached an admin data loss prevention policy. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that issue is. So there could be some very specific issues that are emerging because of the workplaces that you're in. So my initial guidance for things that sound like it's breaching like admin permission errors, that's where you might need to talk to your internal IT teams, because they might need to give you access to some things. The other unfortunate piece might be the policy of your Power Automate. They just haven't set it up in a way that means that you can use it. So unfortunately, we're trying to do one size fits all here, and you're all going to have pretty unique issues, I think, come out of this if they're not working. But pleased to see so many people had some success. Now, I'm going to show you an example of what using those same basic principles just then, but at a really big scale. So this is where a little automation can save you a lot of work. And I'm going to show behind the scenes on the Innovation Network events spreadsheet, which is sort of our pride and joy right now. So let me just share my screen. Oh, I've got to hit the button. Here we go. So this is a behemoth. When I was talking about we had 50,000 event registrations, that's all collated in here. So for every event we have, a row is in this form, spreadsheet, and this entire table is populated by a form that someone fills out. And when you guys register for the using event registration form, it adds to a number here. So we had 409 registrations for today's event, and every time you registered, that number would bump up. And all of these things were activated by a Power Automate flow. So I won't go into the dirty detail of how this all worked, but it can be really helpful when you just chip away at a little thing. You can build these really useful tools that enable us to keep track of all of the thousands of you who are really interested in what events are coming up. I've sort of talked myself a bit hoarse, so I'm going to stop now for a second. And I know that we're running out of time. So firstly, I think we have a feedback form that might be floating around, and actually I might let Ketal take over for a second so I can drink some water, if that's okay, Ketal.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much, Dave. So we do have, I would say, a couple of minutes for questions, and there were a few in the chat that I will pass on to you. In the meantime, yes, there is feedback form that is automated thanks to Dave and Carrie's and Andrew's good work. It's pretty short. It should take like 30 seconds or less, and it's really important for us that you share the feedback. That really help us to find out if we are putting out the right events in the right format for you, because the Innovation Network is your network. So there were all kind of questions. I have to give a big shout out to a lot of people in the chat who answered those questions right away. So thank you so much. And I can't name them all because there were a lot of people exchanging information. So thank you for each and every one of you who ask question and answer question in the chat. One that was coming very often, and I don't know if you wanted to touch on it, was about the possibility to have an attachment being sent in an automatic answer, like we just did for the book club. So it could be guiding questions, for instance, for the book.
So that's a really good question. And I knew that I opened a can of worms the moment I talked about adding an attachment to the email. So it is possible, but it's a little tricky because it's not as simple as sort of just drag and dropping a file within the flow. You need to point in an additional step to get like the metadata, the file information around where that file has been uploaded. So it needs to be in OneDrive or SharePoint. I'm not going to spend the time now telling you how to do that, but I will show you a couple of resources that you can access to do things like this. So I'm just going to jump into the share screen really quickly. First up is YouTube. So there are plenty of people who just love creating one-on-one tutorials to help you with very specific tasks. So if I just go to YouTube right now and I'm like, Power Automate, attach file to email. Great, I found one there. So I'm going to share my screen. There'll be a couple of dud ones, and you'll be able to work out pretty quickly whether or not it's worth watching. I tend to look at, how many thousands of views they have. So I just simply asked the question that I was trying to find the answer to. Power Automate, attach file to email. I reckon this guy will probably guide me through that. And it's only a 5-minute process, so that's probably a good one to go for. But there are so many guides on YouTube to walk you through some of these issues. And the value of this presentation is to sort of let you know that this tool is available to you. And I've got a government context as well. So I'll be coming up with some of the maybe the same privacy issues that you might have too. But yeah, that YouTube is a great resource. And the other one is the Power Automate Learn sort of panel. So share my screen again. On your homepage in Power Automate, you've got this Learn button, and that takes you to sort of a self-directed learning workspace that'll sort of help you go through some of the basics as well. So there's tons of learning material out there, and we'll send them in a follow-up email after this presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Dave. So there are all kind of interesting questions that I think could be another hour-long event about choosing your tool that I find really interesting. Why would you go with SharePoint list or Forms or Outlook or Mail? But I really think that we don't have the space to discuss that now, but I love that people are already in this critical space of which tool am I actually choosing. There's just one question that I would ask you, and then I think everybody will have earned lunch. It's about the spreadsheet that you created separately. And the question is, because when we create a form in Microsoft Form, it allows you to have a spreadsheet that automatically sync with the result. Why would we create a separate spreadsheet rather than the automated created one?
That's a really good question. And so there's a couple of answers I have for that. The simplest one I have on the top of my mind is we might want a database that has multiple forms attached to it. So such as our event registration, we've now there's like hundreds of events in there. We don't want to have to create hundreds of separate spreadsheets to track that data when we want to have a look at it in a bigger view. It's also a bit, sometimes there's sharing limitations because the Excel spreadsheet is uploaded often into your OneDrive. We use Excel in SharePoint, so it's much easier to share with people across our commission, as well as in other departments. So if we ran an event in collaboration with someone from Department of Health, we'd have a spreadsheet in SharePoint that we could share directly with them. And then it's a bit more professional if it comes from the Victorian Public Sector Commission instead of Dave Stevens from VPSC, you know. Yeah. But also you can, the tricky thing here is now I've opened up the sand pit and then you can go and play, but there's right ways and wrong ways, but they all, if you can get the good outcome that you're looking for, I encourage you to test and try things. There's no prescriptive way to create solutions here.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dave, for today's presentation. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for taking that slow enough that I think most of us were able to follow along. I'm really glad. I hope that each and one of you learned something today, that you enjoyed automating some book club. I really hope that you're going to automate something this afternoon or this week and show it to some of your colleagues. Feel free to email us your automation stories at Innovation Network. Always happy to hear if you had success or if you actually had a hurdle, to go through. We're always happy just to hear how you're doing. Thank you so much for joining us today. I wish you a great lunch and a great afternoon, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for coming, everyone. See you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Joe.